What's going on? Boys, more order development. Today we're going over three things: stress highs, moon and star, and an attempt at a gospel. Starting with stress highs. I think I've stumbled into another altered states thing. Stress has been a big part of my life for a long time now, but in the last week and a half, I've stumbled into something interesting. There are moments you reach a point you're so stressed, your body starts shutting down, and your mind starts misfiring. I've been in that place many times before, but only recently has it become this hyper-focused. The point you're so stressed and physically failing, you do almost anything to get out of it. But your mind is in overdrive, and despite feeling everything you're thinking is only contributing to further shutting down your body, you're coming up with interesting ideas. For instance, a few days ago, I had another nightmare about prison. The first intense one I've had in a couple months, I think. Most noteworthy in the nightmare, aside from the hyper stress, was a dude, a veteran, who had been wrongly convicted for decades at a time, twice now. And he thought it was a good thing. This sort of injustice is the price we pay for civilization, and he is happy to suffer it and see it inflicted on others, if it means maintaining the state. And when I woke up, I was already cold sweating and twitching. And later that night, I felt like I couldn't breathe because my throat wouldn't let me swallow my saliva and wouldn't let air in. And while this was happening, I picked up an interesting smell. It smelled like dying in an acceptable way, like the smell of entering a friend's house. In that smell was the knowledge you did your best, you did what you were supposed to do, you lived an ennobling life, and it's okay to die because you are ready to move on to the next thing. You've done all you were expected to do, and there was an anxiety, but not a bad one, like the anticipation before an important trip. Let's get this moving, let's get this show on the road. And of course I came out of it, and all the tension dumped. There was this serenity. And that night, I had relaxing dreams. I dreamt of humans living their entire lives in 10 years, and our entire species operating on a 10-year cycle. And in this cycle, there would be two gods of humanity, chosen miraculously at everyone's approval. One god of life and death, with a 10-year term according to the cycle, and another of progress. But I think progress is the wrong word. It's more like process, but progress in a cyclical process. And I don't remember much more about that dream, but when I woke up, I felt so peaceful. But then the stresses came on again. Uncontrollable shaking, vomiting, feeling like your muscles are separating from your bones, diarrhea no matter what you eat, incredible, crushing pressure. You would do anything to get out of it. And you would do anything to get out of it because nothing is working to alleviate this pressure. It has you until it decides to let you go. And when it went away, I felt that same exhaustion and relief. A comforting feeling, like a blanket. But then, for some reason, I realized I was trying to induce one of those stress quakes again. Why would you want that? What you just came out of was worse than having the flu or food poisoning. I don't know what's going on in brain chemistry, but I think I was and am getting high off these stress episodes. It's like a scary movie or bungee jumping or something like that. Except instead of an adrenaline high, it's more like a cortisol high. It feels like dopamine is being released during these things and after them. I just came out of one about an hour or two ago, and I'm still shivery shaky. But I found myself listening to stressful music and thinking stressful thoughts, trying to induce another one immediately. We've joked about Power and Misery, which comes from Cruelty Squad, which is, I think I might have said it before, but if I haven't, a holy text now. I didn't really want to make it a holy text, but it's too potent not to add it to the canon. Despite how weak and dying these episodes make me feel, in some way I also feel invulnerable during them and after them. Almost like I can't die. Because if I could die, then these things would kill me. And even if they did, then it would be okay. Now, I bring these up for two reasons. One, because that smell of it's okay to die was acute. It feels like that is one way death could feel, and of all the ways death could feel, that one wouldn't be that bad. It might even be good. And trying to figure out how to die well is one of the things we grapple with around here. And the second is, this is a weird phenomenon I want you to be aware of. In other words, when you're walking this path, there are weird places you can reach. These stress episodes are an interesting surprise stop on the pilgrimage into your mind toward self-discovery or awakening. In the same way, starvation and sweat hiking took me to weird places mentally when I was younger. Don't let people trick you into staying in the acceptable small town of the communal or socially accepted mind. There are wild places out there. Okay, next part. This one's a little difficult to describe. Moon and Star. I jumped back into Morrowind the other day and decided to take a crack at the main quest because as much as I love Morrowind, I've never actually done the main quest. And I am once again blown away by this game. Morrowind is my favorite of the series. Skyrim is a favorite because of its modding potential and my introduction to the series. You can craft your own reality. And despite my love of Morrowind, I think I have more hours in Skyrim than I do almost every other Elder Scrolls game put together. Daggerfall Unity is actually, in my opinion, the most mechanically immersive of the series, and the most fun to play as a game moment to moment. But nothing beats Morrowind in the world building and world immersion, narrative immersion, and the another word, good word, I heard from someone, psychedelic fantasy department. Hard to beat. I won't go super deep into Elder Scrolls lore, but I'll set up a few things for the unfamiliar. The primary mystery at the core of Morrowind is the betrayal and resurrection of Indoril Nerevar. There are tons of different accounts of exactly what happened, and why I love it is, unlike Dark Souls, which is mysteries, Morrowind somehow maintained its obfuscation. Dark Souls lore and chronology still isn't 100% set in stone, but people act like it is. So even if you want to try to puzzle things out for yourself, you're not going to get very far. There is an established, hard narrative. Communally, anyway. Whereas Morrowind, which you think or would think would be communally set in stone, somehow still isn't entirely. And I love that shit. I'm not saying you can't work things out on your own in an environment of communally accepted narrative, but it's a lot harder and it's a lot less fun. And because The Elder Scrolls is psychedelic in nature, you can think about it forever. Anyway, Nerevar, Moon and Star, one clan under Moon and Star, Saint Nerevar, and so on, gets stabbed to death by his nasty wife and two not boys because he doesn't want mortals to have the power to become gods, which is what this whole war is going on over. I recommend you watch some videos on Morrowind if you're interested. This is fire shit here. And then they go and kill, or almost kill, Nerevar's Greek best buddy, whom he tasked with safekeeping the tools for mortals to become gods. But something happened. Either he got curious or he got greedy and became a god, and then he was driven off by the tribunal, the three, who then themselves became living gods. And this betrayal was so foul, a murder so foul, the demon princess god, Daedric prince of the Chimer at the time, cursed this very racist race of elves by turning them into black people. And then there came a series of reincarnations of Nerevar's spirit, the Nerevarine. Nerevar's soul reborn in different bodies. A communion of the new body and its context, and Nerevar's soul and its context. Two as one. And many past Nerevarines failed to become the Nerevarine fully because they failed a series of trials or proofs. Weird deja vu just now, but isn't that fitting? Anyway, you might be wondering how a person can be the Nerevarine and fail to be the Nerevarine. The answer is religion is very fucky-wucky, and a bunch of people have different ideas on what this all could mean. That's part of the fun. And it's entirely possible you are the quotes Nerevarine 100% by chance. You fulfill all the prophecies, but there is a nagging sense this might all be bullshit. But if you're doing everything right and stopping Dagoth who is racist Satan, and the tribunal, dirty betrayers who are going to get what's coming to them, fools they are, does it matter if you are actually Nerevar reincarnated? Well, I was getting really into it, and upon receiving Moon and Star, which is a ring forged and enchanted and blessed by Nerevar's friends, blessed by Azura, to make him very persuasive, a cult of personality, if you will, which, little odd, Nerevar is normally presented as this great guy. If that's the case, why does he have a demonic ring of power? Little suspect, especially when you consider the fact the enchantment is supposed to kill anyone who isn't Nerevar, if they try to wear it. Well, as far as I know, conveniently, in the game, you can wear it, but you never try to get anyone else to wear it. So does it actually kill anybody? I have no idea. And I'm trying to work all this out for myself. That's why I'm getting into it. This is a mystery that is, or has, room for speculation still. There's still room for your brain to grind against it like a cheese grater. And it was in the oceanside hideout of the dissident priests reading up on banned texts about Nerevar, something struck me about Moon and Star. Coincidences, complete chance, totally random. Every man and woman is a star, not a sun, a star. And I think the moon is your shadow. It's an entirely other person in you who isn't you and also is you. Moon and star, Nerevarine, two become one. A synthesis of identities. It doesn't matter if you aren't the Nerevarine. You, a star, have taken on Nerevar, the moon, your shadow. And you are using this self-other to deepen your capability, expand your possibility, and find greater purpose. You never interact directly with Nerevar, but in studying him, his life, his death, you grow more than you would have otherwise in tandem with this shadow figure looming all around you, but never materially. Ancestor worship is another thing in Dunmer culture that you will probably want to keep in mind. Honoring your proud ancestors and looking to them for guidance and protection. So how did this hit my noggin? Well, I'm obsessed with ENTJs, but almost every ENTJ I meet falls short of this thing that's hard to explain. The shadow. You're looking for something material externally that exists already within you, internally, and spiritually or cognitively. You'll never find it or interact with it directly because it's all around you. It is you, but not you. In that dissident priest hideout, I was struck with the vision TM. You speak with ENTJs, they all have this hyper-reality vision of where they want to be, realer than real. And even the lowest among them seem always to be moving in that hyper-reality's direction somehow. taking even the smallest actions, specifically to get closer to that vision. Well, I was struck with an unstable yet vivid vision of SOA realized. The facility, the resources, the atmosphere, the purpose, the people, almost exactly identical to this dissident priest shit. An organized but differently minded group trying to work out what exactly the truth is, and then what they think about it and what should be done about it. Each in their own way trying to put something false and broken in order. And I don't know how to get there. I don't have visions that vivid. I normally have a set of ideas that would be cool and a set of ideas that are realistic. Never the vision. And I have no idea how to get there, but I recognize I'm making erratic moves toward it, based solely on instinct. It's like Nerevar, this self-other, this identity who may or may not exist, but is building you up rapidly, and only more rapidly and effectively when you embrace it. Who are you without your shadow? You are a star. You have the capability to develop your conscious self to a point and reach a point, maybe even a high point. But ancestor worship, Dunmer, when you honor your shadow and commune with it, it's like you upgrade into a higher being, or start, at least, undergoing a metamorphosis. In functions terms, you have all 8 functions inside you already. You have all 16 types inside you already. By embracing and honoring them, they begin feeding you power and direction. Their experiences, their insight, their possibilities. In, the Cavern of the Incarnate in Morrowind, where you can meet the remnants, or the wraiths, of failed Nerevarines. They tell you their stories, where they went wrong, why they failed, how much they love you and believe in you and hope you can make it, and they offer you their support, not just with stories, but with what they left behind. It was a weird emotional moment. All your unconscious aspects, chief among them your shadow, Moon, are here to help you. If you embrace them and honor them and listen to them, you carry inside you wholeness. You, one of 16, are at the helm, but you have 15 self-others with you. Your job, in addition to working to become your best or complete self, is to do right by your shadow and your other selves, and let them help you instead of repressing them. Moon and Star, you are so much more than you realize. All you need to do is honor yourself as best you can. We're starting to walk in circles. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Moon and Star. Every man and woman is a star. Okay, final thing. An attempt at a gospel. Now that's what it turned into, but it didn't start that way. I wanted to write another mecha story and try to do the essence of Denelum better, even though I'm afraid I'll never be able to. So I came up with a cosmological framing. The trouble with that is books are only so long. And on the one hand, you have the urge to put in all of the lore, all the lore into one book, particularly up front, and that makes for an awful story. But if you don't put the lore in, or don't put enough of it in, you feel like you've done something wrong. But I realized this lore, or cosmological framing, backs up my beliefs a bit. Now, this isn't exactly what I believe, and of course, I don't believe this is what's happening. However, I've found stories like these exist in a weird space of not being real, but explaining something that's going on so well they might as well be. Or put another way, this is an accessible way of understanding more difficult ideas. They're like invented training wheels. However, they explain something well enough, they almost become real. They're in a weird state of not real because they are invented explicitly to explain something difficult to wrap your head around, but also essential and irreplaceable because they are so effective or necessary to understand what's going on. I think that's the way religious texts work. A narrative becomes canonized because it explains something important. Anyway, this is a framing drawing heavily from Gnosticism, explaining one idea I have about the way things work. This isn't my only idea of how things work, but it hits on ideas integral to my belief system, even if I don't believe in this framing exactly, and I would have trouble explaining them otherwise, even if I don't subscribe to them directly. Okay. The monad is the ultimate god, but it isn't exactly a god because it doesn't really do a whole lot. It doesn't have any ego we can understand, and it doesn't answer much. In fact, it might not know much. The monad is the being before being. The monad is the before. The monad is a thing, a singularity, but it's less of a monolith of things we can know or do know, and more a singularity of everything we don't know. It is a god, it is the god, but it's the god of shit that doesn't make sense and can't make sense. It's the singularity of all the unknowable. It's the whole into which every contradiction and mystery is cast, and from which every contradiction and mystery crawls. The monad is the intangible god of there is, but shouldn't be. So the monad created existence, and from the monad spawned numerous demiurges, masters of material. And these gods were, for the most part, uninterested in knowledge. They exist to exercise power. and they are deities of eternal, ignorant malice. And between fighting each other, they create archons to flex their power without direct intervention, and they create subjects onto which force can be projected. Numerous or innumerable mortal races, even dimmer and more ignorant than they are, little better than animated matter. One day in eternity, from the monad springs two odd gods. These two are not masters of reality. They are not masters of material. They were or are instead blessed with genius, the ability to think and to question, instead of just following material urges. One is named Joytan, and originally I was pronouncing it Yoitan, but I wanted the name Joytan, so we're just going to call her Joytan. The other is Medeba. These two are twin sisters. Both are not inherently that powerful, and for that reason, these other gods and their archons and their angels and demons gang up on and maul them. And both sisters, again, twins, both blessed with the same genius, come up with different ways out and for different reasons. Medeba decides to deceive these demiurges, to play them against each other, and to steal their power whenever possible. Her goal is to disempower the powerful. She accomplishes this by manipulating her way among them. Joytan handles her situation a little differently. She engineers machines to resist these demiurges. Joytan doesn't have innate mastery over material, but she does have mastery over the knowledge of how material works, better than anybody else. And she uses this knowledge to secure her own safety, or her own place in the universe. And she ends up coming upon proto-humans, who are still at this point a slave race who exist to receive torment for the satisfaction of these innumerable malevolent gods. Well, Joytan identifies with these proto-humans. She sees herself in them. She gets fixated on them. Now, why would a divine being identify with the equivalent of walking mud? Well, compared to her sister, Joytan is a little bit tisty. Some brilliant people get obsessed with trains. Joytan got obsessed with proto-humans. She saw herself in them for some reason. Maybe she felt a kinship with these beings who existed to be pushed around, similar to the way she was accustomed to being. And unlike other gods or demiurges who would create these minor races in their own image just to torment them in an odd, masochistic, sadistic, weird shit, self-obsessed irony way, Joytan molded herself after these humans. Such was her identification with them and their plight, much to the derision of other gods, including Medeba, her sister, her twin sister, I need to remind you, the other genius daughter of the monad. So the other gods, including Medeba, come to screw with Joytan and her little dollies. Not directly yet. They're sending in angels and demons and archons to fuck with them. as an expression of power. This god and her adopted children are so weak, we don't even need to be there to fuck with them. And Medeba joins in because she's beginning to resent her sister. We are born of the same mind. Why are you wasting your time fighting to empower the disempowered for your detriment when you could be disempowering the empowered for your benefit? Now, I'll add here before we continue, try not to look at these people, or at least Joytan, as good or bad. Be very careful about anthropomorphizing them too much. Anyway, Joytan, in addition to her typical machines, creates a singular magnum opus. We're going to call it Vashtor, even though we're probably going to have to figure out another name for legal reasons if this ever goes anywhere, which it probably won't, but it might. Vashtor is the mechanical steward guardian of humanity, the protector-in-chief, the head mecha in charge. And thanks to Joytan's genius in creating him, he ends up developing his own genius. His own divine spark, maybe. And this gives Joytan a little idea that's going to get more intense later. So, between Joytan, Vashtor, and other engineered war machines, products of genius, this warband is pushed back. And that makes many gods, archons, angels, demons, demiurges angry. And now, the gods are coming to fuck shit up themselves because they are furious and they can't control their urges. Medeba, realizing what's coming, becomes taken with dread. She's frozen. She doesn't intervene, but she doesn't help either. All she does is watch. Joytan sees what's coming and realizes her and Vashtor's genius alone can't protect humanity or themselves from what's coming. This is going to be really ugly. So Joytan, in a stroke of genius, sacrifices herself. She fractures herself into shards of genius, shards of intelligence, shards of sentience, shards of the divine spark, and implants these shards of herself into every human. Every man and woman is a star. And she entrusts humanity, and now herself. Joytan isn't exactly dead. She is now one with humanity, a self-other. She is every human, but no human is Joytan. She entrusts humanity and this diffuse, dispersed version of herself with Vashtor. And Vashtor, loyal robo-man he is, because steel will never betray you, raises humanity into something terrifying. An armored, mechanized force existence has never seen, and thus far could never have predicted. Who would do this? What god would fracture themselves to uplift such nothing creatures? And while no human, man or woman, is individually as powerful as Joytan was, each and every human carries her infinite potential. And the demiurges themselves receive such an ass-whooping at the hands of humanity, they run, they retreat. And by breaking herself apart, Joytan inadvertently becomes the single most powerful, non-single, non-living, but not dead either, god in existence. And then Vashtor, his work fulfilled, fractures himself and implants his will into machines. And now Joytan and Vashtor live in a diffuse marriage between all their children and creations. Now, unfortunately, that retreat by the demiurges was a little more calculated than anyone realized. Because humans are, despite their new genius, their uplifting, still creations of the demiurges. Joytan may have saved humanity, but the demiurges created them, and that taint doesn't go away so easily. So many, many years pass with no interaction between humanity and the gods, the malicious gods who once tormented them. And eventually humanity mostly forgets about the demiurges and about Joytan, about their nature. And now, taking more after their creators than their saviors, humanity rips itself apart. Collectively, humanity commits suicide so nearly complete, they've reduced themselves back to one planet. Coincidentally, their homeworld. And technology so primitive, and history so decimated, they're back to wallowing around in mud with no idea of what's going on. Reduced almost entirely back to their base natures, but for their intelligence, their genius, which they're now using to throw mud at each other more effectively. And this is where Medeba, or when Medeba re-enters the picture. Joytan, if you are anthropomorphizing her the way you shouldn't, she is the earnest engineer. Medeba is the bitter serpent. Medeba comes now to look upon her sister's debased, adopted children and reflect on everything that's happened. And Medeba is now almost nothing but varieties and intensities of hatred. Medeba hates her sister because she loved her and doesn't understand why someone like her sister would sacrifice herself for these filthy, debased shitflingers. Medeba, in one way, views her sister's sacrifice as a waste. Medeba hates humanity for squandering her sister's sacrifice, for dishonoring her memory. Joytan didn't sacrifice herself so these things could go back to wallowing around in the mud, waiting to be tormented. And now, totally disrespecting, dishonoring Joytan's sacrifice, tormenting each other, too preoccupied with sadism even to think of trying to figure out where they came from, why they are where they are, what they were, what they could be. Medeba realizes now she hates herself for not intervening when she should have. She could have, but she was afraid of the consequences of sticking up for her sister, and she hates herself for it. She hates her sister for fighting, in Medeba's view, unnecessarily, for, by acting differently, putting her in a situation in which she hates herself. She hates the few humans who are trying to uplift themselves because their perseverance proves her cowardice or proves her judgment of humanity incorrect. She hates the humans who aren't trying to uplift themselves for proving her judgment of humanity correct. And ultimately, She hates the demiurges for doing all this in the past, making this bad shit happen. And now, not too far in the future, to come and wipe it all out and make it all have meant nothing and destroy even the fragments of Medeba's hated, beloved sister. So Medeba takes on the role of humanity's corrupted steward. She unleashes all her hatred and all her genius on humanity. She wants to punish humanity and the fragments of her sister, so they'll come and punish her, become powerful enough to punish her, so they can then finally punish and end the demiurges. So Medeba starts throwing minor demons at humanity to make them dig deep, remember who they are, and start proving they are worth her sister's sacrifice. Because thus far, all they've proven is they were not worth the sacrifice at all. Even with divinity, humans were incapable of overcoming their base nature. They long for ignorance. They long for violence. They long for torment, both to receive and to deal out. And in the face of these lesser demon attacks, Medeba is more than happy to accommodate those baser humans. She manipulates these products of the demiurges the way she manipulated the demiurges themselves. She makes tainted promises. She casts illusions. She lures the ignorant into deeper ignorance and then devours them. She relishes in punishing humans who don't live up to Joytan's legacy, divinity. However, Medeba can't manipulate and tempt all of them. Where even the demiurges would have given in to the illusion, some humans don't. This is possible only because they honor Joytan's divinity in themselves. Humans alone couldn't resist these temptations. The gods couldn't resist these temptations. Only through Joytan's genius can these humans overcome. And Medeba is an interesting deity because she isn't cut and dry either. Remember, she is Joytan's twin sister. Medeba develops cults of devoted human followers whom she despises. They follow her. They've fallen for her illusion. Not her genius, not Joytan's genius. They, children of the demiurges, Hylics, are obedient to ignorance. Now, while Medeba would prefer humans honor Joytan's genius, seize upon it, Medeba also extends her genius to some humans. Medeba will never sacrifice herself for humanity the way Joytan did. She will, however, in love of her sister's vision and in contempt of her sister's prowess or morality, however you want to look at it. Remember, Joytan is not necessarily moral. Anyway, in a mixture of love and hatred, Joytan extends her genius, what she has to offer, in her divine spark, to some humans. And she will probably end up dying for them as a tutorial boss later, without fragmenting herself. Unless she turns around and joins them. Who knows? Joytan, in terms of genius, is thinking and intuition. Madeba, in terms of genius, is feeling and sensation. Two sides of the same coin. Genius expressed differently. Joytan isn't exactly the little engine who could. I used Tisty for a reason. She's not optimistic, which is a pretty but fragile word. By the way, Hemingway, at the end of The Sun Also Rises, which is about a man who loses his dick and balls in World War One, and the woman he loves, who loves him, not being able to get together and settle down because of both of their personalities. Dude hates feeling emasculated, woman has needs, but they also can't leave each other. And at the end, when they are in a taxi together, but not romantically together, but not romantically separate, God, I think her name is Brett, says something like something about them her wishing they could have gotten together, and Hemingway's self-insert saying it was a pretty thought, or their happy ending was a pretty idea, which is why I love Hemingway. That one choice of word is more poetry in prose than most poetry I've read. Just brilliant. Such powerful simplicity. And it's just right. One word expresses everything you need to know. Anyway, Joytan is not optimistic or bright. Those are pretty words. Joytan, in forcing her spark upon humanity, by, without consent, uplifting them into sentience, goes all in on this titanium knowing in progress, or engineering, science, forward momentum, using not power over reality, but understanding of it. Joytan does something that could be interpreted as good and selfless. And I mean, it is good and selfless, but it's also going all in, manifesting this knowing she carries around. Madeba is the opposite. She is all doubt. She is all passion all the time. She has 617 flavors of hatred, all of which could and maybe will turn into love. And why is all this important to pay attention to? In an existence like this, what does humanity even matter? Well, let's return to the beginning, to the before, the monad. Perhaps the god of everything doesn't know everything. Did a caveman know why he grew hair? Could that caveman consciously control the growth of his hair? No. It is just a natural part of his existence. Maybe he can measure how it works, but he can't control it, and from his limited perspective, he can't figure out why it works. The monad might be something similar, on a much grander scale. As above, so below. Joytan and Madeba, the twin geniuses, daughters of the monad, and humanity, could all be efforts by the monad to understand itself. The monad is evidence not everything can be known. However, it, just its being, is evidence some things can be known. So, these daughters of genius and their adopted, uplifted children could, perhaps, be varied approaches of figuring out everything that can be known to figure out what can't be known, and thereby understanding what this reality is a little bit better anyway. In other words, the Godhead, the singular point of all contradiction, of all mystery, is using us, knowers, to try to figure itself out. Because maybe it is just as Hitler in the bunker fucked as we are. Which, after all this, to me anyway, is a comforting thought. From the highest consciousness to the lowest insect, we are all in this together in terms of not knowing shit about what's going on and wanting to work it out, maybe. And I think that's going to be our first SOA gospel. And I still love that our letters worked out as so, it's fitting. It's a joke. It's not even a joke. But we'll cut it here because I am tired and my software crashed and I lost about, not as much as I could have, granted, but 3 to 4 minutes of shit and I just want to be done. But that about rippity wraps this one up. I hope you enjoyed watching, because I certainly enjoyed making it. I am wondering if my stress episodes have been happening because I've been waiting to figure this out and get it off my chest. And I'm wondering if if they're going to go away, if these weird stress highs are going to go away now that this is out of me. Like if you enjoyed, because it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes. And comment your thoughts, because I love hearing from you. What are some of your weird, natty, altered states of consciousness you've found? I'd be interested to hear about them. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Really a lot of fun on the channel. So much fun. In fact, you can ponder it. You can ponder the Godhead pondering itself. Which you can hear people say, but it doesn't hit you properly until it hits you. Personally. And that's so much I have on this channel. And I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.